There are days when life feels like an uncontrollable whirlwind. Your phone won't stop vibrating. Notifications pile up. Deadlines approach. Relationships become tense. Breathing becomes a challenge. Thoughts accelerate. Your heart tightens, and a sensation that everything is about to collapse takes over your being. You look around, and it seems the entire world is spinning faster and faster, while you desperately try to keep your feet on the ground. This sensation of chaos isn't yours alone. It's the reflection of a society that values speed, relentless productivity, and constant connection. A culture where silence causes discomfort, and where stopping is seen as failing. We live in a world that constantly pushes us outside of ourselves, leaving us adrift like leaves carried by a gale. How many times have you found yourself waking up in the middle of the night with your mind full of worries? Or felt that deep anxiety when realizing that, despite all your efforts, situations continue to escape your control? Perhaps you're facing the end of a relationship, a career change, health problems, or simply the exhaustion of trying to keep all spheres of your life in perfect balance. The suffering we feel in these moments is real and profound. The sensation of being lost amid the storm, unable to see the horizon. The frustration of realizing that the more we try to control the uncontrollable, the more exhausted and distant from ourselves we become. What if in the midst of this apparent chaos there existed a space of profound serenity? What if the peace you so desperately seek didn't depend on the absence of turbulence, but could be found even in the center of the storm? Buddhist teachings reveal a paradoxical truth. External chaos doesn't need to determine your internal state. There exists a quality of presence and clarity that remains unaltered, even when everything around seems to be falling apart. It's as if in the center of the hurricane, there existed a point of absolute quietude. This peace isn't something we need to conquer or create. It's already present as our deepest nature. The challenge lies in recognizing and accessing it, especially in the moments when we need it most. In this journey, we'll explore how to find this imperturbable center within ourselves, even when life seems like absolute chaos. It's not about escaping difficulties or seeking artificial calmness, but awakening to an understanding that fundamentally transforms our relationship with life's challenges. At the heart of Buddhist teachings, we find a profound understanding about the nature of reality that can radically transform our relationship with chaos and difficulties. This understanding begins with the recognition of impermanence, anicca, as a fundamental characteristic of everything that exists. Everything is in constant flux and transformation. Thoughts arise and disappear like waves in the ocean. Intense feelings that seem overwhelming eventually dissipate. Life circumstances, whether favorable or challenging, inevitably change. Even our own body and identity are in a constant process of transformation. This truth of impermanence isn't merely a philosophical observation, but an experiential reality that, when truly understood, liberates. When we resist this transitory nature of life, we create suffering for ourselves. This is the profound meaning of dukkha, the suffering that arises not just from painful experiences, but fundamentally from our resistance to the impermanent nature of reality. Observe how we react to chaos. We tense the body, accelerate the mind, desperately cling to the need for control. We build elaborate psychological defenses in an attempt to create a sense of security and permanence in a world that, by its very nature, cannot offer these guarantees. It's like trying to prevent the movement of ocean waves, an effort that only generates more exhaustion and frustration. The Buddha taught that this resistance is born from the illusion of the separate and permanent self, what we call ego, that constantly seeks control and security. This illusion of the separate self, anatta or non-self, is what keeps us trapped in a cycle of suffering. When we completely identify with our thoughts, emotions, and external circumstances, we become like a small vessel tossed from side to side by the ocean waves. But there is an alternative to this way of living. Buddhist sutras speak about upekkha, equanimity, the capacity to maintain a balanced and open mind in the face of inevitable life changes. It isn't indifference, but a receptive presence that doesn't allow itself to be dragged by emotional storms or external circumstances. Equanimity naturally arises when we begin to disidentify our essence from transitory experiences. We are not our anxious thoughts. We are not our feelings of despair. We are not the chaotic circumstances we face. There is something in us, a witness consciousness, that remains unaltered even when everything around seems to be collapsing. This witness consciousness isn't something mystical or inaccessible. It's the simple knowing that is present in each moment. It's the clear consciousness that perceives thoughts without becoming them. It's the internal space where all experiences happen, but which isn't limited by any of them. Buddhist teachings offer us a powerful metaphor. The mind is like the sky, and thoughts and emotions are like passing clouds. The clouds can be dense and dark, bringing seemingly devastating storms. But the sky, vast, open, and welcoming, remains unchanged, always present beyond the clouds. Even in the most violent storms, there is blue sky above the clouds. Awakening to this deeper dimension of consciousness isn't escaping reality or seeking a transcendental state. It is, on the contrary, a profound dive into reality as it is, without the distortions of our projections, expectations, and resistances. It's finding what Zen masters call beginner's mind, that quality of open and curious presence that isn't trapped by concepts or judgments. This understanding isn't merely intellectual, but something to be cultivated and incorporated through contemplative practice. Through meditation and mindfulness, we begin to recognize the space between the observer and the observed, between the experiencer and the experience. That space is the source of true peace that remains unchanged, even amid apparent chaos. When we access this deeper dimension of our being, we discover an inexhaustible source of clarity, compassion, and creativity. We are no longer at the mercy of external circumstances or turbulent mental states. Paradoxically, it's precisely in moments of greatest challenge that we have the opportunity to awaken to this liberating truth. It is said that many years ago, in the Himalayan mountains, lived a young monk named Tashi. Since arriving at the monastery, Tashi had stood out for his determination in seeking enlightenment and for his rigorous discipline in meditative practices. However, despite all his efforts, he frequently found himself dominated by frustration and the sensation that something essential was escaping him. The monastery master, an old monk with serene eyes and a gentle smile, observed the young man with compassion. One morning, after dawn meditation, the master called Tashi and told him, "Tomorrow, when the sun rises, I want you to meet me at the shores of the mountain lake. There is an important lesson we need to explore." Tashi spent the entire day anxious, imagining what teaching he would receive. Perhaps it would be a secret mantra, or an advanced meditation technique that would finally bring him the peace he so desperately sought. The next morning, the sky dawned covered by dark clouds. The air was dense, and the wind blew with increasing intensity, signs of an approaching storm. Even so, faithful to his discipline, Tashi headed to the agreed location. When he arrived at the lakeshore, he found his master already seated on a rock contemplating the water's surface, which was beginning to stir with the strong wind. "Sit with me, Tashi," the master invited. He had barely settled when the first raindrops began to fall. "Master," said Tashi, concerned, "it seems a great storm is coming. Perhaps we should return to the monastery and continue the lesson when the weather improves." The old monk smiled serenely. "The storm is precisely our lesson today," he replied. Within minutes, the rain intensified. The wind howled among the trees, and the lake, previously tranquil, transformed into a turbulent surface. Waves formed and broke violently against the rocky shores. Tashi was soaked and trembling, not just from cold but from anxiety. The violence of the storm frightened him, and he couldn't understand why the master insisted on remaining there, exposed to the elements. "Observe the lake, Tashi," instructed the master, his calm voice almost inaudible amid the storm's roar. "What do you see?" "I see chaos, master," replied Tashi, protecting his face from the rain falling sideways. "I see agitated water, violent waves, destruction. "Now dive your gaze beyond the surface," said the master. "What exists in the depths of the lake?" Tashi strained his sight, trying to see through the turbulent water. After some moments of intense concentration, something surprising began to reveal itself. As his gaze penetrated beyond the surface agitation, he could discern that, a few meters below the troubled surface, the water remained relatively calm. And in the greatest depths where light barely reached, there was absolute quietude. "I'm beginning to see, Master," said Tashi, with a note of amazement in his voice. "The storm agitates only the surface. In the depths, the lake remains tranquil." "Yes," confirmed the master with a smile. "And the same happens with the human mind. Thoughts, emotions, and external circumstances are like this storm. They create a momentary agitation on the surface of consciousness. But your true nature, like the depth of the lake, remains undisturbed." In that moment, while the storm reached its apex, something extraordinary happened inside Tashi. All the resistance he had been maintaining against the situation, the discomfort of the rain, the fear of the wind, the frustration of being there, began to dissolve. Instead of fighting against the experience, he allowed himself to be completely present in it. And then, paradoxically, amid the violence of the elements, Tashi experienced a moment of profound peace. It wasn't a peace that denied or escaped from the storm, but a peace that existed simultaneously with it. It was as if he had awakened to a broader dimension of existence, where chaos and order, agitation and calm weren't opposites, but different aspects of the same reality. The storm gradually passed, as all storms eventually pass. The sun began to break through the clouds, casting golden rays over the lake that was now returning to its natural serenity. But the transformation that had occurred within Tashi was much more significant than the change in weather. "Do you understand now?" asked the master. "Yes, master," replied Tashi with a clarity he had never experienced before. Peace is not the absence of the storm. Peace is discovering the depths that remain untouched by the storm. The master nodded with approval. "Always remember this, Tashi. When life becomes chaotic and you feel lost in the surface agitation, dive deeper. Your true nature, like the bottom of the lake, always remains at peace, no matter how violent the storm may be." In the years that followed, Tashi faced many other storms, both external and internal. But he never again completely identified with the surface agitation. He had awakened to the depths of his being, where true peace had always been present. Tashi's story invites us to a profound reflection on our own experience. How many times have we completely identified with life's storm? In moments of chaos, we tend to dive into the surface agitation, forgetting that there exists a deeper dimension of our being that remains untouched by turbulence. Finding peace amid chaos isn't a capacity reserved only for monks in distant monasteries. It's a possibility available to each of us, here and now, amid the complexities of modern life. To cultivate this inner peace that transcends circumstances, we can incorporate some practices inspired by Buddhist wisdom. First, recognize impermanence. When you feel overwhelmed by chaos, remember, this too shall pass. Financial crises, relationship conflicts, health concerns, however overwhelming they may seem in the moment, are transitory phenomena. Recognizing the impermanent nature of all experiences doesn't diminish their intensity, but helps us not to completely identify with them. Cultivate a regular meditation practice. Even if just 5 minutes daily, establishing conscious contact with your inner world creates a foundation of stability that remains accessible even in the most challenging moments. In meditation, we don't seek to eliminate thoughts or create special states of consciousness. We simply learn to observe the mind's movement without getting lost in it. A simple practice consists of bringing attention to the breath. When you feel you're being dragged by emotional or mental storms, pause. Breathe deeply 3 times, feeling the air entering and leaving the body. Then, for a few minutes, simply observe the natural breath without trying to control it. This simple but powerful practice anchors you in the present moment and creates a space between you and the storm. Another valuable tool is cultivating body awareness. Our body is always in the present, while the mind frequently gets lost in the past or future. When you feel anxiety or mental confusion, bring your attention to physical sensations. Feel your feet on the ground, notice your posture, observe areas of tension and relaxation. This simple embodiment practice brings you back to the present moment, where inner peace can be found. Learn to identify and question thoughts that intensify the sensation of chaos. Thoughts like, "This will never pass," "I can't bear this," or "Everything is falling apart," are distortions that the mind creates when in a state of stress. Observing these thoughts with some distance, without completely identifying with them, is a liberating practice. Ask yourself, is this thought absolutely true? Am I confusing a temporary feeling with a permanent truth? Cultivate self-compassion in difficult moments. When we're facing chaos and difficulties, we frequently add an extra layer of suffering through self-criticism and judgment. Remember that being alive is exposing yourself to vulnerability. Say to yourself words of kindness, as you would speak to a dear friend in suffering. "This is a difficult moment. Everyone goes through moments like this. May I be gentle with myself in this difficulty." Also remember the importance of non-doing. In a culture obsessed with productivity and problem-solving, sometimes wisdom lies in simply allowing things to be as they are for a moment. Not every problem needs to be solved immediately. Not every emotion needs to be analyzed or transformed. Sometimes the wisest path is to create space for intuitive wisdom to emerge naturally. When you feel you're losing your center, connect with something greater than yourself. It could be through a walk in nature, contemplating the starry sky, or simply feeling the interconnection with all beings who also experience challenges and seek peace. This broader perspective helps us transcend the limiting narrative of me and my problems. Finally, remember that finding peace amid chaos isn't a definitive achievement, but a continuous practice. There will be days when you'll feel perfectly centered, even amid difficulties, and others when you'll see yourself completely identified with the storm. Treat yourself with patience and compassion at each stage of this path. The practice isn't about perfection, but about returning, time after time, to your center. True peace doesn't depend on the absence of problems, but on your capacity to remain connected with the depths of your being, even when the surface is agitated. Like the bottom of Tashi's lake, your essential nature remains serene, waiting to be recognized in each moment. As we conclude our reflection on finding peace amid chaos, it's worth remembering that this wisdom isn't something external to be conquered, but an inherent quality awaiting our recognition. Like the moon reflecting in agitated waters, the image may appear fragmented, but the moon itself remains intact. Similarly, your essential nature, clear, compassionate, and awake, remains unchanged, even when the mind's surface is turbulent. This understanding isn't merely philosophical, but deeply practical. Each time you remember to breathe consciously amid a stressful situation, each moment you manage to observe your thoughts without completely identifying with them, each instant you choose to respond with wisdom instead of reacting by impulse, you are cultivating this capacity to remain centered, even when everything around seems to be collapsing. I invite you to make this understanding a living practice. Tomorrow, when you wake up, take a few moments before starting your routine to connect with your center. Breathe deeply 3 times and establish the intention to remember this inner peace throughout the day, especially in moments of challenge. Throughout the day, create small, conscious pauses, 3 attentive breaths between one activity and another, a moment of full attention while waiting in line or at a traffic light, an instant of connection with yourself before an important conversation. Remember, just as Tashi discovered the serene depth of the lake amid the storm, you too can access your center even in the most challenging moments. This capacity isn't a gift reserved for few, but a universal human possibility that develops through conscious practice. May you recognize the peace that already exists within you. May you find your center even when the world around seems like chaos. And may this discovery bring not only personal well-being, but also transform the way you relate to others and to the world. If this reflection touched something in you, Consider sharing your experience. How do you find peace amid life's challenges? What practices have helped you stay centered when circumstances are difficult? Your stories and insights not only enrich this community, but can also inspire others who are going through similar moments. Also suggest themes you'd like to explore in future reflections. Which aspects of contemporary life most challenge your inner peace? Which Buddhist teachings would you like to understand more deeply and apply in your daily life? Always remember, in the center of the storm, there is peace. In the heart of chaos, there is clarity. And in the core of each challenge, there is an opportunity to awaken to your true nature, vast as the sky, deep as the ocean, and unshakable as a mountain.